In 2025, over 14.5 million people in the UK, that's more than 1 in 5, are living in poverty. Even more shocking, over 4 million of them are children. And here's the part no one's talking about. A growing number of these people are working full-time jobs. How is it possible that in one of the richest nations in the world, people with jobs are still lining up at food banks? Why are more and more families living in temporary shelters, even while paying rent every single month? Something doesn't add up. And the truth is, the headlines aren't telling the full story. It's easy to blame inflation or the economy, but what if I told you that behind the curtain, a series of quiet policy changes, forgotten communities, and hidden costs are creating a poverty crisis that's worse than we've been led to believe? Today we're breaking down 10 reasons why poverty is exploding in the UK right now. Reasons you're not hearing on the news, and that might even be affecting people you know. So if you think poverty only happens to other people, or that the safety net will catch everyone who falls, think again. What's happening now could shape the country for decades. And trust me, some of these will shock you. The gig economy trap. At first glance, the gig economy seems like a modern solution to traditional employment problems. Flexible hours, independence, and the ability to work on your own terms. But beneath the surface, it's become a poverty trap for millions in the UK. Gig workers, from delivery drivers to freelance creatives, are often classified as self-employed. That means they don't get sick pay, holiday leave, or even a guaranteed minimum wage. Many are forced to work long hours just to make ends meet, and when demand drops, so does their income, instantly. No safety net, no fallback. And here's the catch: these jobs are growing. More than 4.4 million people in the UK now rely on gig work as their main income. That's nearly 1 in 7 workers. It's not just students or side hustlers anymore. It's parents, caretakers, and even retirees trying to cover their bills. One recent study found that nearly half of gig workers live below the poverty line. That's not flexibility, that's exploitation. There's also the hidden psychological toll. With income depending on algorithms and app ratings, many gig workers report constant stress and anxiety. It's like being stuck in a race with no finish line and no rules. It doesn't end there. Gig workers often lack access to basic financial services like mortgages or credit, simply because their income is too irregular or considered unstable by banks. This leads to even deeper exclusion, reinforcing the cycle of poverty. And yet, this system is expanding. Why? Because it's cheap for companies. No benefits, no long-term obligations, just labor on demand. It boosts profits while shifting all the risk onto the worker. So while the gig economy might sound like freedom for millions of people, it's anything but. It's a fragile existence masked as opportunity, and it's silently expanding poverty under the radar. If we want to fix the poverty crisis, we have to rethink what we call work. Number 2. Universal credit reforms backfire. Universal credit was introduced with the goal of simplifying the benefit system, a single monthly payment to support those out of work or on a low income. On paper, it sounded like progress. But in reality, many of the reforms made over the last few years have done the exact opposite. They've pushed more people deeper into poverty. One of the biggest issues? The 5-week wait. New claimants must wait over a month before receiving their first payment, forcing many into debt, rent arrears, or relying on food banks just to survive. For someone already in a vulnerable position, 5 weeks is a lifetime. And then there's the sanction system. Miss one job center appointment or submit a form late, and your payments could be stopped for weeks, even months. These penalties don't just affect lazy claimants. They often hit the sick, the disabled, and working parents trying to juggle multiple responsibilities. Meanwhile, real-term benefit amounts have fallen due to inflation, and caps on housing and child support have left families unable to meet basic needs. For many, universal credit has become a system that punishes instead of supports. It's no surprise that demand for emergency food parcels from groups like the Trussell Trust has skyrocketed in recent years. People aren't choosing to live off benefits, they're being failed by a system that's supposed to help them. Universal credit should be a safety net, not a trapdoor. Yet for too many in 2025, it's become the very thing that's dragging them down. What do you think? Is universal credit helping or harming people? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you find this video insightful, hit the like button and subscribe for more deep dives into real issues affecting everyday lives. Number 3. The hidden cost of childcare. Imagine waking up at 6 a.m., getting your toddler dressed, making breakfast, and rushing to drop them off at nursery before heading to a full-time job that barely covers the bills. Now imagine that half your monthly income goes straight to childcare. That's the reality for countless parents in the UK today. Childcare has become one of the most punishing costs for working families. In some areas, it's more expensive than rent. A full-time nursery place for a child under 2 costs an average of £14,000 a year. And that's before factoring in transport, uniforms, or emergency care. And here's the part no one talks about. It's forcing parents, especially mothers, to drop out of the workforce entirely. They're not lazy, they're not unwilling. They've done the maths and realized that working just doesn't make financial sense anymore. For single parents, the situation is even worse. Without extended family or flexible jobs, many are stuck in a loop, unable to afford childcare, and therefore unable to work, which keeps them dependent on a system that barely sustains them. Government support. It exists, but it's patchy, hard to access, and rarely enough. Free hours don't cover full days, and means-tested aid often excludes those just above the eligibility line, the so-called working poor who fall through the cracks. And the ripple effects don't stop at the family level. This is a workforce issue, a gender equality. Every parent sidelined by childcare costs represents lost productivity, unrealized potential, and in many cases a child growing up in deeper financial hardship. Childcare should be a ladder that helps people climb, not a weight dragging them down. But in the UK right now, it's one of the biggest and quietest drivers of modern poverty. Number 4. Housing crisis intensifies. It used to be that if you worked hard and saved, you could eventually own a home. That dream is slipping further out of reach for millions across the UK. In 2025, the housing crisis isn't just about affordability, it's about survival. Rents have skyrocketed, especially in urban areas. In London, the average rent for a one-bedroom flat now exceeds £2,000 a month. Even in smaller cities, families are shelling out over half their income just to keep a roof over their heads. And for those on benefits, the housing support simply doesn't match reality. More families than ever are living in temporary accommodation, hotels, B&Bs, even shipping containers. According to Shelter, over 140,000 children in England are now officially homeless. Not couch surfing, not living with relatives, homeless. And it's not just the unemployed. Nurses, teachers, and other essential workers are being priced out of the very communities they serve. They're commuting for hours, living in overcrowded flats, or giving up entirely and moving away. The government has promised new housing projects, but many are delayed, underfunded, or aimed at affordable price points that are still far out of reach for the average renter or buyer. At the same time, buy-to-let landlords and corporate investors are snapping up properties, converting family homes into multiple rentals, and driving up prices. The system rewards hoarding property, not providing homes. Even social housing is in crisis. Waiting lists stretch for years, with some applicants spending a decade or more in limbo. Repairs are delayed, conditions are poor, and residents are left powerless to demand change. Housing is not just a market commodity, it's a basic human need. And right now, it's being treated like a luxury item, available only to those who can pay the most. The housing crisis is no longer a warning. It's here. And it's pushing more people into poverty with every rent increase, eviction notice, and broken promise. Number 5. Mental health services cut. There's a silent emergency happening across the UK, and it's playing out in doctors' offices, emergency rooms, and behind closed doors. Mental health services, already stretched before the pandemic, are now buckling under pressure. And the people paying the price, those already at the edge. Access to mental health support has never been more limited. Waiting lists for therapy can stretch 6 months, a year, sometimes even longer. If you're in crisis, you might be told to call a helpline or sit tight until a space opens up. For someone struggling with depression, anxiety, or trauma, that's not just frustrating, it can be life-threatening. It's worse for low-income communities. These areas often have fewer mental health facilities, fewer professionals, and more stigma. And because therapy is rarely free outside the NHS, private options are off the table for most. So people suffer in silence, their conditions getting worse until they can't work, can't study, can't cope. This leads directly to poverty. Mental health challenges often reduce a person's ability to maintain employment, manage relationships, or seek out assistance. They fall through the cracks, and the system doesn't catch them, because it's too overwhelmed to even notice. Cuts to local authority budgets have meant closures of community mental health centres, youth outreach programs, and addiction services. What's left is a hollowed-out system where only the most urgent cases get attention, and even then, it's rarely enough. We talk a lot about the economic cost of mental illness, lost productivity, increased NHS spending. But what about the human cost? The parent too anxious to attend job interviews, the teen dropping out of school, the worker dismissed for burnout. These are real lives, unraveling quietly, and poverty only makes it worse. It's a vicious loop. Poor mental health leads to poverty, and poverty worsens mental health. Until we fix both, we fix neither. Number 6. Rural poverty ignored. When most people think of poverty, they picture inner-city neighborhoods, crowded flats, food banks on street corners, visible signs of struggle. But there's another side to poverty that gets almost no attention: rural poverty. And in 2025, it's quietly worsening. In rural areas, they're just as damaging. Public transport is scarce or non-existent, making it difficult to get to jobs, schools, or even the nearest grocery store. Internet access is patchy, so working from home or accessing online services isn't a given. It's a luxury. Jobs are limited, especially ones that pay well. Many rural economies rely on seasonal or part-time work in farming, tourism, or retail. Benefits like universal credit don't account for the unique costs of rural life, like having to own and maintain a car just to survive. Healthcare, that's another challenge. With fewer GP practices and long distances to hospitals, even basic medical care becomes a logistical nightmare. Mental health services are even rarer, leaving people isolated and unsupported. And then there's housing. While rural homes may look quaint, many are poorly insulated, energy inefficient, and expensive to heat, especially during long winters. Fuel poverty is common, and government support doesn't stretch far enough to help. Even education becomes a problem. Some children must travel miles each day just to attend school. When families can't afford transport or school supplies, the educational gap grows, locking in cycles of hardship from a young age. The media rarely covers these stories. Politicians often overlook these communities. And the data? It's harder to track because poverty in rural areas is scattered, not concentrated. It hides behind hedgerows, down winding lanes, in silence. Rural poverty is invisible not because it's rare, but because it's ignored. And the longer we pretend it's not there, the deeper the damage goes, not just to those living in it, but to the fabric of the nation that's supposed to support them. Number 7. Cost of food and fuel skyrocketing. For millions of families across the UK, the weekly shop is no longer routine, it's a crisis. Each trip to the supermarket feels like a gamble, watching prices inch higher while paychecks stay frozen. Essentials like milk, bread, and eggs have doubled in cost compared to just a few years ago. And it's not just food. Fuel prices are soaring too, hitting everyone from drivers to those heating their homes. Energy bills have ballooned to record highs, with some households now paying over £3,000 a year just to keep the lights on and the heating running. Prepayment meters, often forced onto low-income families, mean that when the money runs out, so does the power. No lights, no heat, no hot meals. These aren't luxuries, these are necessities. And for many, they're slipping out of reach. The cause? A perfect storm of global supply chain disruptions, inflation, war, and profit-driven pricing. Meanwhile, wages and benefits lag far behind. A loaf of bread might only rise by 50 pence, but across hundreds of items and dozens of pay periods, the squeeze is relentless. For low-income households, every pound spent on rising bills is a pound not spent on school supplies, clothes, or even rent. Families are being forced into impossible choices: food or fuel, heating or hygiene. Food banks are now reporting record demand, not just from the unemployed, but from nurses, delivery drivers, and public workers, people with jobs who still can't afford to eat. This is what modern poverty looks like, not destitution in the old-fashioned sense, but a slow erosion of stability, driven by prices that rise faster than hope. And the worst part, many of these hikes are permanent. What was once temporary cost of living pressure is quickly becoming the new normal. Number 8. Immigration policy fallout. When immigration is discussed in politics or the media, it's often framed as a burden or a problem. But in reality, immigrants have long been the backbone of essential sectors, from healthcare and agriculture to construction and hospitality. In 2025, changes to immigration policy are starting to show their real cost, not just to migrants, but to the entire economy, and especially the poor. Tighter visa restrictions and post-Brexit enforcement have created severe labor shortages. Farms are short of pickers, care homes are short of carers, and small businesses can't find the staff they need to stay open. That shortage of workers drives up costs, delays services, and pushes prices higher, especially in food and care, two sectors low-income families rely on most. Many of these jobs were traditionally filled by immigrant labor, work that is physically demanding, often low-paid, but vital. With fewer people willing or able to take those jobs, the pressure lands on British workers who are now being asked to do more for less, or not at all, and for migrant workers who are still here. The environment is increasingly hostile. Legal pathways are narrow, the threat of deportation looms, and support systems are minimal. Exploitation is rampant, with many afraid to speak out or report abuse for fear of losing everything. It's a myth that immigration harms the economy. In fact, it's often the opposite. When we restrict movement, we don't just lose workers, we weaken the very systems that make daily life function. The poorest suffer first. When services collapse, when food becomes more expensive, when carers disappear, it's not the rich who feel it. It's the families just scraping by. Immigration policy isn't just a border issue, it's a poverty issue. And right now, the fallout is spreading. Number 9. Digital divide deepens. In a world where almost everything has moved online, from job applications to GP appointments, digital access is no longer a luxury. It's a necessity. But for millions across the UK, that access just isn't there. And it's turning a gap into a canyon. Let's start with the basics. Around 1 in 5 adults in the UK still struggle with basic digital skills. That means they can't fill out online forms, use email confidently, or access digital banking. And in low-income households, internet connections are often unreliable or completely absent. The cost of staying connected is rising too. Laptops, tablets, smartphones, data plans, these aren't cheap. And when you're choosing between Wi-Fi and heating, the internet often loses. Children fall behind in school because they can't access homework portals. Job seekers miss out on opportunities because they can't upload a CV or attend a Zoom interview. Then there's the digital bureaucracy. Benefits, job centre appointments, council housing lists, all online. If you can't navigate the system, you can't access the help you need. And good luck finding face-to-face alternatives. They're being phased out. Rural areas face an even tougher time. Patchy broadband, no mobile signal, and limited public libraries mean digital isolation is baked into geography. Add in disability or age, and the barriers multiply. And let's not forget trust. Many older adults or vulnerable individuals avoid online services entirely due to fear of scams, confusion over technology, or a deep mistrust in digital security. This divide doesn't just isolate people, it locks them out of opportunities. Education, healthcare, financial support. Everything now depends on a screen. Closing the digital divide isn't about gadgets or apps, it's about equality. Because in 2025, if you're not online, you're left behind. And for the most vulnerable, that gap can mean the difference between surviving and slipping through the cracks. Number 10. Media narrative manipulation. When we talk about poverty, the conversation is rarely neutral. The language used in newspapers, talk shows, and social media carries weight. And more often than not, it's that keeps them poor. In 2025, media narratives continue to paint poverty as a personal failure. Lazy, irresponsible, addicted to benefits. These stereotypes are not only outdated, they're dangerous. They shift attention away from the structural causes of poverty. Low wages, unaffordable housing, underfunded services, and exploitative policies. And it's not just tabloids. Even mainstream coverage often focuses on individual stories of overcoming adversity, as if poverty can be solved with grit alone. What's missing is a serious examination of the systems that create the adversity in the first place. Worse, these narratives influence public policy. When the public believes that most people on benefits are faking it, or that poverty is a lifestyle choice, there's less support for the very programs that are supposed to help. Politicians respond to headlines, not statistics. And so the cycle continues. Social media plays its part too. Misinformation spreads fast and often unchecked. Viral posts claiming outrageous benefit payouts overshadow the real stories of families scraping by on the minimum. Nuance gets lost in the noise. Even reality TV has a role in shaping these views. Programs that showcase benefit cheats or dramatize life on welfare aren't just entertainment, they're propaganda. They reinforce stigma and make it harder for people to ask for help without judgment. But here's the truth. The vast majority of people living in poverty are working, caring for others, or physically unable to work. They're not lazy, they're exhausted. And media narratives that suggest otherwise do real harm. If we want to address poverty honestly, we need to change how we talk about it. Because until the conversation shifts from blame to accountability, from shame to solidarity, we'll keep fighting symptoms while ignoring the cause. Poverty in the UK isn't just growing, it's evolving and often in silence. Tell us in the comments, which reason hit you the hardest or is affecting someone you know? And if you want to go deeper, check out our last video. It connects the dots even further. We pour hours into every episode so you can get the truth. One click to subscribe means everything. In the last decade, more than 1 million people in the UK have slipped out of the middle class. That's not a forecast, it's happening right now. And in some cities, the shift is so fast, it's leaving behind empty homes, boarded up businesses, and families forced to make impossible choices just to survive. Let's be honest, when you think of economic collapse, you might imagine a market crash or a major company going bankrupt. But the real crisis? It's happening quietly, in plain sight, street by street. And the scariest part? Most people don't even notice until it's too late. The middle class, the group that once defined security and stability, is vanishing. In this video, we're going city by city across the UK to uncover where this invisible economic landslide is hitting hardest. We'll expose the cities where average earners can no longer afford homes, where stable jobs are disappearing, and where entire neighborhoods are transforming beyond recognition. You'll learn why a decent salary might not protect you anymore, and how rising costs, broken housing markets, and wage stagnation are pushing people out of the middle faster than ever before. So, is your city already on this list? Or could it be next? Backed by solid data and research, what you're about to see is more than surprising. It's urgent. Stick with us till the end. Because this isn't just a list. It's a warning you can't afford to ignore. Number 10. Glasgow. Glasgow, once the steel spine of Scotland's economy, is now in the midst of a quieter but equally dramatic transformation. The slow, steady disappearance of its middle class. This isn't about decline across the board. In fact, Glasgow has poured billions into redevelopment. The skyline glitters with glass offices and luxury flats. But here's the kicker. These sleek upgrades aren't for the people who've called Glasgow home for generations. What's unfolding is a deepening divide. On one side, areas like the West End and Finnieston are buzzing with tech hubs, vegan cafes, and boutique apartments. On the other, neighborhoods like Easterhouse and Postle Park face entrenched poverty and social neglect. And the space between them is widening. For middle-income Glaswegians, life is being squeezed from all directions. Wages have stagnated, but rent, utilities and transportation costs keep climbing. Public services are stretched thin, schools are under-resourced, and healthcare access is patchy in the most affected areas. Meanwhile, long-term rentals are vanishing. Landlords are switching to lucrative short-term lets aimed at tourists, further tightening the housing supply. Families with stable jobs are finding themselves priced out of communities they've lived in for decades. There's also a shift in who the city is being built for. New developments favor luxury living, not affordability. This makes it nearly impossible for mid-level professionals, teachers, nurses, retail managers, to buy or even rent within city limits. Glasgow is changing, but not for everyone. It's becoming a city of extremes, one for the affluent and another for those barely getting by. The middle ground, it's eroding fast, so the question is, in the race for progress, who gets left behind? Stick around as we move on to number 9, a city where beauty, popularity and rising costs are driving a similar story. Number 9. Leeds. Welcome to Leeds, one of the fastest growing cities in the UK, a business powerhouse and a city where the middle class is feeling the pinch harder than ever. At first glance, Leeds appears to be thriving. There's been a boom in high-rise developments, shopping districts and digital industries. But look closer and you'll see a troubling pattern. Growth is not being shared equally. For middle-income earners, those in public service, retail management, or mid-level corporate roles, life in Leeds is getting tougher by the month. The problem? Wages aren't keeping pace with the cost of living, and housing is at the heart of the issue. Over the last 5 years, average house prices in Leeds have surged by over 25%. Rent has followed close behind, and for many families, this means one thing: compromise. They're moving further out of the city, taking on longer commutes and sacrificing quality of life just to afford basic housing. Even those who manage to stay in the city centre face shrinking disposable income. Energy costs, council tax and childcare expenses are gobbling up paychecks, leaving little room for saving, investing or enjoying life. Meanwhile, gentrification is taking root. Traditional working and middle-class neighbourhoods are being redeveloped into luxury flats and chic cafes that cater to a different demographic, often excluding the very people who built the city's culture. And it's not just about money, it's about identity. Leeds is becoming unrecognisable for many who've lived there for decades. What do you think? Are these changes making Leeds better or worse? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives like this. We've still got 8 more cities to uncover, and some of them might surprise you. Number 8. Edinburgh. Step into Edinburgh and it's easy to get distracted by the beauty. Cobbled streets, historic landmarks, and a skyline dominated by a castle. It feels timeless. But beneath the postcard-perfect surface, something unsettling is unfolding. Edinburgh is becoming a city that people love to visit, but can no longer afford to live in. Tourism here is booming. Festivals, conferences, and year-round attractions draw millions every year. And with that influx comes money, lots of it. But also a problem: short-term rentals are eating up the housing supply. Entire blocks that once housed working and middle-class families are now Airbnbs. This shift is pricing out locals at an alarming rate. Teachers, social workers, and NHS staff, people essential to the city's function, are struggling to find homes within commuting distance. Rent inflation, pushed by investor landlords, is breaking budgets. And it's not just about rent. Daily life is getting expensive. Groceries, transport, council tax, it all adds up. Middle-income earners are increasingly forced to choose between staying in the city they love or relocating to more affordable but distant suburbs. Even more troubling is the cultural shift. Long-standing communities are fragmenting. Local shops are replaced by chain cafes, and neighbours become strangers as long-term residents move out. The middle class here isn't just being squeezed, it's being displaced, quietly, gradually, and systematically. And it raises the question, who is Edinburgh really for? The people who keep it running, or the people just passing through? As we continue down the list, the pattern becomes clearer and more alarming. Let's head to the next city, where the charm of coastal living hides an equally serious problem. Number 7. Brighton. Brighton. Quirky, colourful, and endlessly cool. It's the place people escape to for seaside vibes, indie shops, and a breath of fresh, salt-laced air. But for the middle class trying to live here, Brighton is anything but a breeze. Let's start with the obvious: housing. Brighton has one of the most expensive property markets outside of London. And while that might not shock you, what's alarming is how it's affecting families who used to comfortably call the city home. Middle-income earners, nurses, teachers, freelance creatives, are being boxed out. The demand for homes is sky high, but the supply, severely limited. Investors are snapping up properties for holiday lets and second homes, pushing prices into the stratosphere and leaving residents scrambling for affordable options. The ripple effects go deeper. Renters are facing brutal competition. Even modest one-bed flats attract thousands of applicants. That means paying more for less or relocating entirely. And it's not just about housing. Everyday costs in Brighton are climbing too: transport, groceries, childcare, council tax. For many middle-class families, living in Brighton now means budgeting down to the penny. What makes this more disheartening is Brighton's identity. It was once a haven for the alternative and the artistic. But as costs rise and wealthy newcomers move in, that culture is being diluted. The city's vibrant charm remains, but who can afford to enjoy it? Brighton is no longer just a destination, it's a battleground between lifestyle dreams and economic realities. And the people losing are often the ones who made Brighton what it is in the first place. Let's move on to number 6, where academia, innovation, and investment are reshaping a city's soul. Number 6. Cambridge. Cambridge, home to one of the most prestigious universities in the world, a hub of innovation, and a magnet for global talent. But beneath the accolades and academic prestige lies a growing tension. Cambridge is becoming unlivable for the very people who keep it running. The issue isn't lack of success, it's too much of it, too fast. The tech boom, driven by biotech and AI companies clustered around the so-called Silicon Valley, has flooded the city with investment. But this economic surge has done little to help the city's middle class. Instead, it's inflated housing prices beyond reason. Average homes now cost more than 12 times the average salary. For a city of under 150,000 people, that kind of pressure is devastating. Key workers, teachers, police officers, junior doctors, are increasingly commuting from distant towns, spending hours each day just to make ends meet. Those who stay sacrifice space, quality, and in many cases, mental well-being. Local culture is fading too. Independent shops, quirky cafes, and old-school pubs are being replaced by upscale boutiques and chain restaurants catering to affluent newcomers. What makes Cambridge's situation unique is its paradox. It's a city built on knowledge, science, and human capital. Yet the very humans it needs most are the ones being squeezed out. Add in traffic congestion, unaffordable childcare, and a dwindling rental market, and you've got a pressure cooker environment that's quietly pushing the middle class out of the equation. Cambridge may be excelling on paper, but real life tells a different story. One where progress comes at a price not everyone can afford to pay. Next up, a city famous for academia and tradition, where the cost of legacy is becoming too heavy to bear. Number 5. Oxford. Oxford, the city of dreaming spires, where scholars have walked the cobbled streets for over 900 years. It's a place of history, intellect, and inspiration. But today, Oxford is also a city where the middle class is quietly being priced out of the present. Behind the postcard image of Gothic architecture and academic prestige lies a severe housing crisis. Oxford regularly ranks as one of the least affordable cities in the UK when you compare average wages to average house prices. For many middle-income families, that ratio has become unbearable. Living in Oxford used to mean you were part of a vibrant, culturally rich, and intellectually diverse community. Now, it means navigating sky-high rents, relentless traffic, and the creeping sense that this city is no longer meant for you. The university and its surrounding research parks have brought in billions, but little of that wealth trickles down to the people working in schools, hospitals, or local businesses. Junior academics, civil servants, and small business owners find themselves living in cramped flats or commuting from distant towns just to afford life on an Oxford salary. Meanwhile, developers target luxury housing, often leaving affordable projects on the back burner. The result? A squeeze on supply, surging prices, and a shrinking middle. Cultural spaces are fading too. Bookshops, cafes, and community centres struggle to survive in a city increasingly defined by exclusivity. Oxford might still symbolise academic excellence, but for the average family trying to build a life here, it's less about opportunity and more about survival. And that brings us to number 4, a city where charm meets challenge, and the middle class is being edged out by its own success. Number 4, Bristol. Bristol, creative, vibrant, and fiercely independent. It's a city that marches to the beat of its own drum, where art meets activism and old docks now pulse with innovation. But beneath the surface of this cool, progressive city lies a reality that's getting harder to ignore. Bristol is pushing out its middle class. In recent years, Bristol has become one of the most desirable cities to live in the UK. Its blend of culture, tech, and lifestyle has attracted thousands from across the country. But popularity comes at a price, and that price is now unaffordable for many who call the city home. House prices have surged by over 30% in the last 5 years, outpacing wage growth significantly. Rent is no better. Families are now paying level prices without the same level of salaries or infrastructure. Middle-income earners, once the lifeblood of Bristol's community, teachers, artists, local entrepreneurs, are being priced out. They're forced to the outskirts or beyond, where commutes are longer, schools are under pressure, and the connection to the city fades. And then there's gentrification. Neighbourhoods like Stokes Croft and Easton, once gritty and authentic, are transforming fast. While new cafes and co-working spaces move in, standing residents and local businesses move out. Even the city's celebrated culture is under threat. Rising commercial rents and a lack of affordable space are pushing out artists, musicians, and independent venues. Ironic in a city known for its creative spirit, Bristol's energy remains magnetic, but its accessibility? That's fading fast. Next, we're heading to a city where a decline in industry and a rise in living costs are colliding head-on, leaving the middle class in the dust. Number 3, Birmingham. Birmingham, the beating heart of the Midlands, once known as the workshop of the world. With its proud industrial roots and cultural diversity, it's long been a city of opportunity. But today, Birmingham's middle class is being pushed into a financial corner, with fewer and fewer ways out. Let's talk about jobs. The decline of traditional manufacturing has left a gap that service industries haven't filled. Sure, there are roles in retail, hospitality, and call centers, but they rarely offer the stability or pay that once defined middle-class life here. Pair that with rising costs of transport, utilities, and housing, and the pressure builds fast. Birmingham was once affordable, not anymore. A surge in demand has driven up housing prices, while public transport fares keep climbing. For many, getting to work is now a daily expense they struggle to justify. And while shiny regeneration projects are transforming parts of the city centre, the benefits aren't reaching everyone. Fancy shopping malls and high-rise flats cater to outsiders and investors, not to the local communities who need support the most. Middle-income families are caught in the middle, not wealthy enough to access new housing, not struggling enough to qualify for help. And with schools facing funding cuts and healthcare waiting lists growing, even essential services are starting to strain. Birmingham isn't one of collapse, it's a slow exclusion. Exclusion of the things that once made a solid life possible: a good job, a decent home, a strong community. And as more families feel the squeeze, the question becomes, who is Birmingham being rebuilt for? Next, we turn to a city once defined by reinvention, now struggling with the cost of its own revival. Number 2, Manchester. Manchester, the city of reinvention. From its industrial roots to its modern skyline, Manchester has always embraced change. But in its latest transformation, fueled by tech, media, and investment, something's being left behind: the middle class. At first glance, it's all success. Cranes dot the skyline, glass towers climb higher each month, and global companies set up shop in gleaming offices. But the prosperity isn't trickling down, it's pushing people out. Housing costs have skyrocketed. The city centre, once home to affordable flats and local shops, now resembles a luxury district. Developers are focused on high-end rentals and premium condos, not homes for everyday earners. Middle-income families, nurses, engineers, council workers are being forced further and further out into suburbs where prices are also rising. Commutes are longer, public transport is overstretched, and the quality of life is slipping. Then there's gentrification. Neighborhoods like Ancoats and the Northern Quarter, once gritty and full of character, are now filled with artisan bakeries and co-working spaces. Trendy, yes. Accessible to most locals? Not even within the job market, the divide is growing. The tech and digital sectors pay well, but they're not hiring en masse. Meanwhile, the bulk of jobs created are in lower-paid service roles, offering little in the way of advancement or security. Manchester's revival has created a tale of two cities, one rising high in the glossy pages of real estate brochures, and one where middle-income earners feel increasingly out of place in their own hometown. As the city races toward the future, its middle class is being left behind, quietly but unmistakably. And that brings us to number one, the capital city, where the cost of ambition is crushing an entire economic class. Number one, London. A city of ambition, diversity, and global prestige. It's where dreams are chased, fortunes made, and trends born. But for the middle class, it's a city that now feels like a fortress, expensive to enter, harder to stay in, and nearly impossible to thrive in. The numbers speak for themselves. London's average house price is nearly 9 times the average UK salary. For a middle-income earner, owning a home here feels less like a goal and more like a fantasy. Even renting isn't a safe bet. Rents have soared to record highs, with bidding wars now common for basic flats. But the real story goes deeper. The city's economy is polarized. On one end, high earners in finance and tech reap massive rewards. On the other, a growing army of low-paid workers struggle to get by. In between, the middle is getting crushed. Living in London today means sacrificing space, time, and often your mental health. Commutes are long, childcare is unaffordable, and groceries cost more than anywhere else in the country. You can earn well and still feel broke. Even neighborhoods once considered solidly middle class, like Walthamstow or Peckham, are transforming. Chain stores replace local businesses, and investors snap up housing before families even get a chance. What's most alarming is the pace. The middle class isn't just struggling, it's disappearing fast. Teachers, police officers, junior doctors, they're either moving out or burning out. London may still be the crown jewel of the UK, but it's one that's become too heavy to wear. The lights are still bright, the skyline's still stunning, but for millions of everyday people, it no longer feels like home. And with that, our countdown comes to a close. But the conversation is just beginning. And there you have it, 10 cities, one vanishing middle class, and a future that's shifting fast. Have thoughts about your own city? Drop them in the comments, we read every single one. If this video opened your eyes, our last one dives even deeper into the housing crisis. Go check it out next. We pour countless hours into bringing you stories that matter, so if you found this valuable, support us with just one click, subscribe. Did you know that one city in the UK has a crime rate 3 times higher than the national average? Or that some of the most violent crimes aren't happening in London, but in towns you probably never suspected? These aren't just numbers, they're everyday realities for thousands of people living across the country. When we think of crime in the UK, most of us jump straight to the big cities, London, maybe Manchester. But the truth is way more shocking. Some of the most dangerous places in the UK are actually smaller towns, seaside resorts, and university hubs. And the reasons behind it? Poverty, drugs, unemployment, gang culture. The list goes on. In this video, we're counting down the top 10 high-crime cities in the UK based on recent police and government data. But it's not just about the stats. We're diving into the stories, the realities, and the surprises behind each name on the list. Which city has become a hotspot for gang violence? Which one is battling one of the highest burglary rates in Europe? And which unexpected place has claimed the #1 spot for most crimes per capita? Stick around. You won't believe which city tops the list. Number 10, Nottingham. Nottingham might be famous for Robin Hood, but modern-day crime here isn't the stuff of folklore. Ranked number 10 on our list, this East Midlands city has one of the highest crime rates per capita in the UK. Over 100 crimes per 1,000 people annually, according to recent police data. What's going on in Nottingham? For starters, it's a vibrant student city, home to 2 major universities. That means a large transient population, busy nightlife, and unfortunately, a steady stream of incidents involving theft, assault, and antisocial behavior. In fact, theft from persons and public disorder are particularly common in areas like the city centre and around clubs and bars. But there's more to it than just student partying. Nottingham has long struggled with pockets of deprivation, especially in neighbourhoods like St Anne's and Radford. These areas face higher unemployment rates, lower income levels, and issues with drug-related crime and gang activity. While the city has made progress in regeneration and community policing, many residents still feel unsafe, particularly at night. Recent initiatives have tried to tackle the problem, from better street lighting to increased police presence in known trouble spots. Community leaders have also launched youth outreach programs aimed at steering young people away from gangs and towards education and employment. But progress is slow, and the impact isn't yet widespread. What's really surprising is the contrast. You can be walking through a trendy cafe district one minute and step into a high-crime zone the next. This dual identity keeps Nottingham teetering between its reputation as a youthful modern hub and its challenges with urban crime. So why is Nottingham not higher on the list? Because while its numbers are serious, other cities show even more intense patterns of violence, organised crime and social unrest. And if you think Nottingham's crime rate is bad, just wait till you hear who's number 1. Number 9, Sheffield. Sheffield may be known as the Steel City, but some of its neighbourhoods have been hardened by more than just industry. Ranked number 9 on our list, Sheffield has seen a sharp rise in crime over recent years, especially in categories like antisocial behaviour, theft, and knife-related incidents. What makes this city stand out? Unlike some of the others on this list, Sheffield doesn't have one notorious area. Instead, crime is more evenly spread. From the city centre to quieter residential suburbs, reports show a consistent presence of vehicle break-ins, street harassment, and petty theft. But the real concern is the increase in knife crime, especially among young people, a troubling trend that's echoed in cities across the UK. Part of the issue lies in economic decline. Once a booming industrial hub, Sheffield still bears the scars of lost manufacturing jobs. In areas like Burngreave and Page Hall, unemployment and poverty have made it harder for communities to recover, creating an environment where crime can take root. Combine that with underfunded youth programs and limited police visibility, and you've got a recipe for social tension. Despite this, Sheffield remains a proud, resilient city. Local organisations are working hard to reclaim streets, provide safe spaces for teens, and bridge community divides. But many residents will tell you progress is slow and trust in safety is still being rebuilt. Sheffield might not be the worst offender, but its widespread issues and growing concerns earn it a spot in the top 10. Think Sheffield deserves to be this high on the list? Or do you think another city should have taken this spot? Drop your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to like and subscribe for the next cities. You won't believe who's coming up. Number 8, Bristol. Bristol is a city of contrasts. On one hand, you've got colourful street art, bustling harbourside cafes, and a strong green energy movement. But scratch beneath the surface and there's a darker story unfolding, one that's earned Bristol its spot at number 8 on this list. Crime here isn't just about numbers, it's about patterns. And in Bristol, those patterns are deeply woven into the city's social fabric. A high number of drug offences, particularly involving heroin and crack cocaine, has become a major concern. These aren't isolated incidents either. Police reports consistently flag Easton, St. Paul's, and parts of Southmead as persistent trouble zones. What's fueling this? A mix of gentrification clashing with long-standing poverty. As trendy coffee shops move in, rents go up, but support systems don't always follow. That tension breeds resentment, and sometimes violence. Add to that a thriving nightlife scene in the city centre, and you get spikes in violent assaults, especially on weekends. Even more worrying is the rise in hate crimes and racial tensions reported in recent years, shaking Bristol's image as a progressive, inclusive city. Locals say the sense of community still exists, but it's under pressure. You also can't ignore the role of organised crime. County Line's drug trafficking has infiltrated Bristol's outskirts, pulling vulnerable teens into a dangerous cycle of debt, violence, and fear. Local charities are trying to intervene, but the resources are stretched thin. This isn't to say Bristol is broken. Far from it. But the crime here has a different flavour, less about territory or gangs, and more about inequality, addiction, and cultural friction. It's complex, messy, human. It's not always visible on a postcard, but it's real, and it's affecting the people who live here every single day. Number 7. Birmingham. Birmingham isn't just the UK's second-largest city, it's also one of the most complex when it comes to crime. With over 1 million residents, a diverse cultural mix, and a rich industrial past, Birmingham is bursting with energy. But that energy sometimes spills into violence, theft, and urban unrest, earning it the number 7 spot on our list. One of the most concerning issues here is violent crime. According to West Midlands Police, Birmingham consistently ranks among the top cities in England for stabbings, assaults, and gun-related incidents. Gang rivalries, particularly in areas like Handsworth and Lozells, have created no-go zones after dark, where tensions flare fast and unpredictably. But it's not just gangs. Knife crime has surged among teenagers, sparking fears about safety in schools and public spaces. Police have ramped up stop-and-search tactics, and community groups are pushing for youth centres and mental health support. But resources are stretched thin. Property crime is another major concern. Car thefts, burglaries, and shoplifting are all reported at above-average levels. And in high-density neighbourhoods, antisocial behaviour, from loud disturbances to intimidation, remains an everyday stress for many residents. What's especially challenging is the sheer scale of it all. Birmingham's size amplifies everything, problems and solutions alike. Policing a city this large requires serious coordination, and even small oversights can snowball. There's also the cultural complexity. With over 180 nationalities represented, tensions can occasionally arise, not from diversity itself, but from the inequality and segregation that sometimes follow. That dynamic plays out in policing, housing, education, and of course crime. Still, Birmingham's story isn't all bleak. The city's leaders are investing in urban regeneration, from revitalizing the bullring to supporting tech startups. There's hope, and it's real. But safety remains a top concern, especially in inner-city wards where opportunity still hasn't caught up with ambition. Birmingham's problems are big, but so is the fight to solve them. Number 6. Manchester. Manchester is no stranger to the spotlight. Known for its music, football, and iconic industrial heritage, it's also a city facing deep-rooted challenges when it comes to crime. At number 6 on our list, Manchester's crime rate continues to raise alarms, particularly around burglary, violent assaults, and firearm incidents. In Greater Manchester, violent crime has seen a steady increase over the past decade. Areas like Moss Side and Cheetham Hill are well known locally for gang activity, and firearm seizures in neighbourhoods aren't uncommon. Greater Manchester police often report gun-related offences that rival those of much larger cities, a statistic that regularly surprises outsiders. Burglary is another major issue. Manchester has one of the highest rates of home break-ins in the UK. The city's dense housing, student populations, and busy nightlife contribute to frequent property crimes. For many residents, locking the doors isn't just routine, it's essential. Yet Manchester is also a city of resilience. In response to rising crime, several neighborhoods have come together through grassroots efforts. Youth intervention programs, community patrols, and violence interruption teams have begun making slow but promising progress. However, the cracks still show. Police staffing shortages, social inequality, and lingering post-pandemic economic stress have kept pressure on the system. Some residents feel ignored, others frustrated by the cycle of crime that keeps repeating. Even public transport isn't exempt. Reports of assaults, thefts, and harassment on trams and buses are growing. It's become clear that tackling Manchester's crime problem requires a whole-city approach, one that includes policing, education, housing, and social services. Manchester's story is one of extremes: innovation and opportunity on one side. The energy that built this city into a powerhouse is still here, but it's often locked in a tug-of-war between progress and survival. That tension earns Manchester its place in the top 10 and reminds us how fragile urban safety can be, even in a city full of pride and power. Number 5. Leeds. Leeds, the unofficial capital of West Yorkshire, often sells itself as a city of opportunity, booming with finance, education, and tech. But behind its modern skyline lies a growing problem with crime that pushes it into the 5th spot on our list. The statistics are hard to ignore. Leeds consistently reports high levels of violent crime, especially assaults and public disorder. What's more, the city sees a staggering number of drug offences and weapon-related arrests, particularly in and around neighbourhoods like Hare Hills, Holbeck, and parts of Bermontofts. One unusual contributor: the student population. With several universities drawing in tens of thousands of young people, the nightlife is intense, and with it comes alcohol-related violence, theft, and vandalism. Leeds city centre, while lively, often becomes a magnet for trouble after dark. Then there's Holbeck, the site of the UK's first managed red light district. While intended to increase safety for sex workers and residents alike, the area has become controversial, with residents complaining of crime spillover and unsafe conditions. Police presence has increased, but tensions remain high. Property crimes also weigh heavily on the stats. Car theft, home burglaries, and street muggings are frequent enough to raise concern across multiple postcode areas. And with rising living costs and strained local services, the situation risks tipping further out of balance. Even in seemingly quieter suburbs, many residents share stories of bikes stolen from gardens, catalytic converters stripped in broad daylight, or packages vanishing from doors. The sense of security is fragile. Still, Leeds is fighting back. Local councils and community groups are investing in neighbourhood cleanups, youth outreach, and stronger public safety campaigns. But it's clear that for many, fear of crime is still a part of everyday life. That mix of energy, chaos, and tension gives Leeds a complex reputation. Vibrant, yes, but also vulnerable. Number 4. Liverpool. Liverpool is a city that wears its heart on its sleeve, famous for the Beatles, football, and a fierce sense of identity. But it's also no stranger to crime. Ranked 4th on our list, Liverpool's reputation for gang violence and organised crime is well-earned and deeply rooted. The city has long been known as a hub for drug trafficking and criminal networks. Merseyside police have spent decades battling groups involved in everything, from firearms to large-scale drug importation. Names like the Scouse cartel have become infamous, not just locally, but across Europe. One major concern is how normalized some forms of crime have become. In some neighborhoods, like Anfield, Everton, and parts of Toxteth, residents regularly deal with antisocial behavior, burglaries, and street-level drug activity. Gun crime in Liverpool remains among the highest in the UK, a shocking fact for a city of its size. But organized crime here doesn't operate in shadows, integrated into daily life. Taxing, a slang term for extortion, intimidation, and turf disputes, spill into ordinary residential streets, affecting even those not directly involved. Even children are being pulled into criminal activity through so-called county lines networks. Vulnerable young people are groomed to transport drugs across the country, often under threat of violence. For many families, the fear isn't just theoretical, it's present and it's personal. And yet, the city pulses with community spirit. Grassroots initiatives, youth mentorship programs, and neighborhood watches are trying to turn the tide. Still, with deep social divisions, poverty, and housing inequality at play, Liverpool's battle against crime is far from over. This isn't a case of isolated bad actors. The system, the history, and the geography all play a part. And while progress is being made, the scars are visible, and in many areas still bleeding. Liverpool's energy is undeniable, but that same rawness is what makes its crime issue so complex and difficult to untangle. Number 3. London. London, the beating heart of the UK, an international powerhouse and home to over 9 million people. It's a city of unmatched diversity, ambition, and culture. But it's also a city grappling with a serious crime problem that's as sprawling as its skyline. It might surprise you that London isn't number 1. After all, it has the highest total volume of reported crimes in the country. But when adjusted per capita, other cities rank higher. Still, the scale and variety of crime in the capital are staggering. Knife crime continues to dominate headlines. Teenagers losing their lives in senseless attacks has become all too common. Boroughs like Lambeth, Suffolk, and Hackney see disproportionate levels of violent incidents, often tied to postcode wars and gang retaliation. Then there's theft. Mobile phones snatched on mopeds, pickpockets working the tube, high-end shoplifters targeting luxury districts like Knightsbridge. Cybercrime and fraud are also rampant, targeting both individuals and small businesses. London's size and complexity make it especially hard to police. The Metropolitan Police face ongoing staffing challenges, public scrutiny, and a growing sense of distrust from communities affected by both crime and aggressive policing tactics. Transport hubs like King's Cross and Victoria have become crime hotspots, as have nightlife zones in Soho and Camden. The nightlife that draws so many also creates a stage for assault, drink spiking, and public disorder. Even during the day, many Londoners report feeling on guard, checking over their shoulder, clutching their phones tighter, avoiding certain areas after dark. For tourists, it's often invisible. For locals, it's routine. And yet, for all its problems, London remains magnetic. It offers opportunities few other cities can, but that comes with risks. Crime in the capital is constant, evolving, and sometimes shockingly close to home. It's not the most dangerous city per capita, but it might just be the most complicated. Number 2. Bradford. Bradford often flies under the radar in conversations about crime, but the numbers tell a different story. Per capita, it's consistently one of the most dangerous cities in the UK. Sitting at number 2 on our list, Bradford's crime landscape is shaped by a unique mix of economic struggle, community division, and social unrest. Statistically, violent crime in Bradford is alarmingly high. Assaults, harassment, and domestic incidents are reported far more frequently than the national average. In areas like Manningham and Little Horton, residents have grown used to the sight of police tape and patrol cars. Part of the challenge is poverty. Bradford ranks among the most deprived local authorities in England. Unemployment, low education levels, and poor housing conditions contribute to a cycle that's hard to break. When resources are thin, tensions run high, and crime thrives in the gaps. Youth crime is also a significant issue. Knife-related incidents among teenagers have been on the rise, echoing national trends but with local intensity. Community leaders have voiced concerns about gang recruitment, especially among young men with limited options and growing frustration. Cultural tensions can't be ignored either. Bradford has seen its share of division and unrest in the past, and while much progress has been made, the scars still affect relationships between communities and law enforcement. There's also a growing concern around drug-related crime. Reports of cuckooing, where criminals take over the homes of vulnerable residents to deal drugs, are rising. These hidden crimes wreak havoc on victims, leaving both physical and psychological damage behind. Despite the dark stats, there's fight in Bradford. Local charities and youth organizations are stepping up, providing mentorship, skills training, and safe spaces. But change is slow, and for now, Bradford remains high on the list, not just for its crime rate, but for the deep-rooted challenges behind it. It's not just a crime problem, it's a reflection of broader societal fractures. ones that need more than policing to heal. Number 1. Blackpool. Topping the list as the UK's city with the highest crime rate per capita is a place many associate with beach holidays, amusement parks and neon lights. Blackpool. But behind the retro charm and tourist nostalgia lies a reality that's far more complex and troubling. Blackpool has long been a symbol of faded glory. Once a top-tier holiday destination, the town has struggled with decades of economic decline. As tourism dwindled, so did job opportunities, leading to widespread poverty, addiction, and ultimately crime. Statistically, Blackpool has one of the highest rates of drug-related offences, domestic violence, and antisocial behaviour in the entire UK. Certain wards like Claremont and Bloomfield record levels of deprivation and crime rarely seen outside major cities. One of the biggest problems? Transients. Blackpool has one of the UK's highest rates of temporary housing and benefits claimants. Many arrive hoping for a fresh start, but without work or support, they fall into cycles of substance abuse, exploitation, and petty crime. The town is also a hotspot for so-called hidden homelessness. People living in overcrowded bedsits or unregulated housing are easy targets for predatory landlords, drug dealers, and criminals. The police are overwhelmed, social services underfunded, and the support network strained to breaking point. Mental health also plays a massive role. Blackpool has some of the highest rates of depression and anxiety in the UK, and when services are stretched thin, many suffer in silence until the situation explodes. Yet despite the grim data, locals are fiercely proud. There are efforts to regenerate the promenade, improve schools, and offer real alternatives to young people. But progress is hard when crime feels embedded into the very fabric of daily life. Blackpool's place at number 1 isn't about a single statistic. It's about a perfect storm of poverty, instability, and neglect. It's a warning, really, of what happens when a town is left behind. What do you think? Is the UK still worth the move in 2025? Or are the red flags too real to ignore? Drop your take in the comments. Even one sentence helps us build this global conversation. If you found this eye-opening, check out our last video. It dives even deeper into the realities of moving abroad. And hey, we pour a lot into making these videos for you, so if you want to support us, just hit subscribe. It's one click, but it means the world to us. In 2000